Lita Matt Hardy situation where Edge and Lita had an affair behind Matt Hardy's back, resulting in Matt Hardy leaving the WWE because of animosity he had towards a lot of individuals, and he comes back in 2005 under a contract to have a feud with Adam Copeland. It was ridiculous then. We've seen the John Cena car accident, of course, WWE making fun of death allegedly because of what happened with Chris Benoit with the double murder-suicide. We've seen this time and time again. These entertainment news websites can't get enough, are really coming down the throat of WWE for posting all these storylines, creating these storylines off these real-life scenarios and changing them up try to get it by wrestling fans is something they originally came up with, when really it's just based on what's happening in their professional lives. We saw it in 2007 with them making fun of death allegedly because of what happened with Chris Benoit, the double murder-suicide of his wife and his son, which was completely ridiculous how PerezHilton.com posted that along with TMZ. After that, then of course we saw this with Rusev, Lana, Summer Rae, and Dolph Ziggler, which is absolutely pointless, which I don't see really anybody benefiting from. If anything, Summer Rae should be going out on her own as a diva in the Divas division after spending so much time in NXT developing her craft. She was an incredible wrestler there. She got several opportunities at the NXT Women's Championship. She was up for that several times. She wrestled against everybody from Sasha Banks to Emma in incredible NXT matches, and she was really put on display as someone who could have really amounted to something in professional wrestling. And the heartbreaking thing to come out of all this is Summer Rae could be still amounting to something greater in professional wrestling, but WWE have an incredible amount of lack of faith in her, and that's what's really holding her back and allowing her not to jump off the back burner into something incredible for her career in WWE. As long as you have her being a valet for people like Tyler Breeze and Rusev and Dolph Ziggler, whoever she represents, it's only contributing to holding her back. And I want to see her break away from being a valet, a manager, call it what you wish, into a wrestler, someone who's actually getting noticed and someone who actually has a chance of being up for the Divas Championship. I'm tired of seeing the same thing reiterated all the time in the Divas division with AJ and Charlotte and Nikki Bella always dominating as champions, and the same 3 or 4 challengers who WWE believe are in line for a push, like this Becky Lynch, who they're trying to convince us actually is going to amount to something in professional wrestling because of her international feel she brings to the Divas division along with Paige. And I'm not saying they're not going to amount to something special. It's just the same thing is constantly reiterated when someone like Summer Rae should be up for the championship, and who's more deserving to be up for the championship than probably anybody, and who's just being held back by managing someone like Tyler Breeze right now, who I can't stand for how he comes out and believes that he's actually WWE's answer to Rick Martel and Shawn Michaels. It's just ridiculous. I mean, he's a far cry from a Shawn Michaels, and if there was ever anybody who was considered a good-looking man in professional wrestling, it was the likes of Shawn Michaels, John Cena, Randy Orton. Those are the people who set the bar for people like Tyler Breeze to be able to come out and claim what they do and do what they do in these promos and these ridiculous matches that we see them in. If there was ever somebody who set the bar, the upper echelon of professional wrestling to be achieved, it was obviously Shawn Michaels, John Cena, and Randy Orton. And a lot of people, I think, will find time in agreeing with what I've had to say about that. You know, Tyler Breeze, to me, I'm annoyed by him, and I'm just annoyed about how all this has played out over the last couple of months. And I venture to say that I'm not the only one. I can kind of take a gamble and go out on a limb and say that I'm not the only one who is coming away from the last couple of months really frustrated with everything that's happened in professional wrestling. As I said here earlier, what a difference 10 years makes. We've come all the way from The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin being on top as part of the Attitude Era to this time where we're talking about, posts of TMZ.com, which at one point in time or another would have been completely irrelevant to anything happening in professional wrestling. We would have heard about it, but they wouldn't have made as much of an attention draw towards the posts of TMZ.com or eNews or ProfessionalWrestling.com. If they had to mention it, they probably would have mentioned it, but they wouldn't have made as much attention drawn towards it as what it is now in 2015. 10 years ago, this would have been completely irrelevant. And that's why I think it's time for us all to move on and find something more relevant to talk about professional wrestling. Let's talk about the crowning of a new champion recently at Survivor Series. Let's talk about the 25th anniversary of The Undertaker, someone who debuted back in November of 1990 as part of the $1 Million Survivor Series team as part of a double main event. Let's make acknowledgement to things that are actually worth talking about in professional wrestling and move on from this. I know it frustrates a lot of people to see Rusev job the Ryback in a 3-minute match when Rusev would have actually put up a bit of a fight against someone who was Intercontinental Champion and probably been a logical #1 contender at that point in time before the Intercontinental Championship if the storyline were still going the same way it was for Summer Rae and Rusev and Dolph Ziggler and Lana. But unfortunately, they had to change it in their way of punishing Rusev and make it noticeable that they know what TMZ are doing, is to have Rusev come out and lose in a 3-minute match to Ryback, where Summer Rae unveils that he knows that Rusev apparently, or she knows that Rusev apparently is cheating on her. It's just ridiculous how WWE goes about things. It was just a desperate way of killing off the storyline with Summer Rae revealing it to Rusev the way she did. It was really pathetic. It goes from that to slapping him in the face. What an insult. What a way of ending insult to injury. Slapping an incredible athlete in the face. You should be ashamed of yourself, WWE creative, for handling this the way you did. And I don't blame other people for being as frustrated as what I am with this. And I'd say I'm the only one who's frustrated with all this. You're taking 4 incredible talents and you're punishing them. For what reason at the end of the day? What really is achieved at the end of the day? WWE letting TMZ know they know what TMZ posted on their website, letting us know they follow these ridiculous posts by entertainment news websites. We know that they follow these ridiculous posts by entertainment news websites. We don't just need to have it blown out of proportion, though, or completely exaggerated to a point where we're just annoyed as wrestling fans. We contribute to the low ratings that WWE are receiving all the time. This is just a desperate way for WWE to get attention and to let people know that they know what these entertainment news websites are posting. Who really cares at the end of the day? Isn't the wrestling business supposed to be about who's ahead of the other one in the game of one-upsmanship, who's getting the benefit of the doubt? In WWE, who can have the upper hand and keep that upper hand and be ahead of someone for a significant amount of time? That's what usually the wrestling business is focused on, and that's what it should be still focused on in 2015. If you're on a show with a John Cena or a Randy Orton, just as if you were on a show with a Hulk Hogan from 1985 to 1993, that was what wrestling used to be about. Now it's about who can get over on TMZ and PerezHilton.com, and that to me is completely pathetic. That's just a childish way of putting yourself over in either wrestling or entertainment, trying to throw the two worlds together and excusely say that these two worlds can coexist when they actually obviously can't. These posts of TMZ and PerezHilton.com or some other news website like Clever News or eNews.com, it's ridiculous how they're trying to say that entertainment and wrestling can coexist when obviously they can't. This is just a surefire example and or indication as to how wrestling and entertainment obviously can't coexist, and it will be forever and a day before they'll ever find a way of coexisting, because I don't think we're ever going to see that day when wrestling and entertainment can exist as one. They usually come together for WrestleMania. That's the only time of the year that they actually make an exception and say that wrestling and entertainment can actually exist and actually have a friendship and a business relationship, call it what you wish. But this is just a surefire indication or example of how wrestling and entertainment just were never meant to be one world and one world entirely, especially with everything going the way that it has for Rusev and Summer Rae and Dolph Ziggler and Lana. I'm just really feeling sorry, I guess. There's a lot of sympathy coming from me as it relates especially to someone like Summer Rae, who could have amounted to something incredible in WWE, and now her future seems to be more uncertain than ever before. I was initially excited when I found out that Summer Rae was getting away from Rusev after she allegedly had found out that he was cheating on her with Lana. I thought that she was actually going to amount to something far greater than what she was. I said, yes, she's going to start wrestling more in the Divas division, and Rusev is probably going to be put over and probably benefit from all this just as Dolph Ziggler would have. But nobody is benefiting. You have Dolph Ziggler now in this feud with Tyler Breeze, and to make matters worse, to exaggerate the issues, Summer Rae is the manager and apparently is infatuated with Tyler Breeze taking selfies of himself. I mean, who really is going to buy into this? Nobody in the right mind would buy into the idea of Tyler Breeze actually being over in professional wrestling. And the funny thing is, I talked about this in one of my recent columns, which I archived my column form in this corner with Jonathan Clarke, which you can find on my website. And I talked about how nobody is really interested or coming away from something to talk about in the way of Tyler Breeze being in WWE shortly after making his debut. Nobody is noticing Tyler Breeze as much as what they're noticing someone like a Sting being absent because of injury, or Seth Rollins. The DL in WWE is what people are paying attention to now. Who's on the injured reserve list? Randy Orton, Seth Rollins, Daniel Bryan. Everybody's paying attention to that. John Cena taking time off if it's not the DL. The downtime, the down list in WWE, the DL as they call it, are what people are paying attention to, not what's happening between Tyler Breeze and Dolph Ziggler, because Tyler Breeze recently debuted as the answer. WWE's pathetic answer to what's happening with Rusev and Summer Rae and Lana and Dolph Ziggler. I mean, pathetic. It's just a way of jumping to a conclusion and closing the door on something as quickly as you possibly can because you're covering up the fact that legitimately Rusev and Lana were engaged, and you don't want to have this revealed to wrestling fans. And they're obviously making it noticeable to TMZ that they know what happened. Everybody knows that this is actually happening, and everybody knows there's a considerable number of politics with professional wrestling. Politics and wrestling have obviously seemed to go together for years, and everybody knows there's a significant amount of politics with wrestling, and there always will be. There'll never be a day where politics are completely eliminated and irrelevant in professional wrestling and or to wrestling fans or reviewers. There's a considerable amount of politics always existing behind the scenes with wrestling, and obviously this is just a political view of how wrestling and politics have always came together as one for a number of years. If anything, wrestling fans know of the politics, they know what exists behind closed doors, and they knew that this was going on behind closed doors ever before TMZ went public with it. I just shudder to think, and I really am filled with sympathy towards everybody who have just become victims of what TMZ did. TMZ are at fault. But really, should we be pointing the finger at TMZ, or should we be pointing the finger at a number of parties? One being TMZ, and the other being Stephanie, because Stephanie has always been the reason behind these romantic storylines like herself and Test from the early thousands, only to reveal that herself and Triple H were romantically involved before they were ever really legitimately married, which actually happened about 10 years after the point they came out about it, because Stephanie wanted to write it with some pathetic storyline. In 2003, 6 days after she fought her father, she was actually married to Triple H in real life, and they wanted to go public with it years before they ever were legitimately married. It's just pathetic how Stephanie goes about things, which is why I really appreciate why Stephanie's actually shut up now and left it up to Triple H in these promos, and she just kind of stands on the sidelines and lets Triple H do what he does as the COO of the company, which I really appreciate. Stephanie's still the principal owner, but she's not talking as much on the microphone because in all actual fact, it doesn't seem like she's ever known what she's talking about, which is why I really appreciate why they've left it to Triple H now, running things as a COO, and hopefully he'll come up with something creative to happen for Summer Rae and Rusev and Lana and Dolph Ziggler, and obviously Tyler Breeze now, who has found his way somehow into the mix. Somebody explain to me why things have been happening the way that they have, because I don't think anybody has an answer. I know I don't have a legitimate answer. I can't draw a conclusion, but obviously the conclusion that can be drawn, if you were to draw, or attempt at least, to draw a conclusion, is that Tyler Breeze, because of his debut, is someone who's been trying to have something made of himself ever since this whole debacle